She swung the front door open like she was ready for a fight. I was already sitting on the couch, a glass of sweet tea resting in my hand, waiting. The late afternoon light stretched across the living room, quiet and still, too calm for what was about to happen. Her eyes moved across the room the way they always did when she was irritated, scanning, searching, measuring. Then they stopped, right above the mantel. The new photograph. It sat perfectly centered between our wedding portrait and Audrey's graduation picture. For a moment, everything in her froze. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. 5 long seconds passed before she finally spoke, her voice low and tight. "Where did you get that?" That question didn't begin tonight. It began on a Tuesday, the day I accidentally photographed the truth about my own marriage. I've been a real estate appraiser for 22 years. It's a quiet job, built on observation and patience. I walk into properties, measure walls, photograph every angle, and write reports that tell banks what something is worth. But what people don't realize is that the job teaches you something else. It teaches you how to see what isn't being said. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I had a standard assignment, a guest cottage tucked into the backgrounds of Pinehurst Oaks Country Club. It was the same place where Tessa coordinated events, but she had no idea I'd be there that day. Or at least she thought I didn't. The cottage was quiet, almost hidden, sitting behind a maintenance road. Its windows faced the restaurant service lot, a dull view filled with staff cars, dumpsters, and delivery traffic. Nothing remarkable. I went through the routine, room by room, photo by photo, angles, fixtures, windows, floors. Just another job. Well, the photos capture the service lot. Rows of vehicles, a dumpster enclosure. Nothing I paid attention to at the time. I finished up in under an hour, locked the place, and headed home. It wasn't until that evening, sitting at my desk, that everything changed. I was reviewing the photos, cropping and adjusting, when something in that service lot image caught my eye. I zoomed in slightly, then more, then all the way until the pixels began to break apart. And there it was, a white Toyota Camry. Her car. I didn't need to see the whole plate. I had memorized it over 19 years of marriage. The timestamp on the image read 11:14 a.m. That same morning, Tessa had told me she'd be off-site all day, meeting a floor supplier 40 minutes north. There was no reason, none at all, for her car to be at that club. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, trying to make it make sense. Maybe she changed plans. Maybe she forgot to mention something. Maybe it was nothing. But then I noticed something else. Parked right beside her car, close enough that the mirrors nearly touched, a black and chrome motorcycle. Still, one photo isn't proof. It's a question, so I went looking for answers. I opened an archive folder from a job I'd done at the same club the month before, a gazebo appraisal near the golf course. Different day, different angle, but one of the long-distance shots captured that same service lot in the background. My chest tightened as I zoomed in. White Camry, same plate, same spot, and right next to it, the same motorcycle. 2 photos, 2 different days, a month apart. I checked my messages from that earlier date. Tessa had told me she was visiting a venue in the opposite direction that day. Another lie. That's when the pattern stopped being coincidence and became something else entirely. I went to the club's website. It took less than a minute to find what I needed. Under the restaurant page, there was a staff section, and there he was, the head chef, standing proudly beside his motorcycle. Patrick Callahan, 51, divorced, running that kitchen for years. I had met him once, just once, at a holiday party. Tessa had introduced us. I remember the handshake, the way he carried himself. Confident, comfortable, the kind of man who knew exactly the effect he had on people. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. Now, I couldn't think of anything else. 2 lies, 2 photos, the same location, the same man. I didn't need a confession. I had evidence, and evidence doesn't argue. It just sits there, waiting for you to accept it. That night, I made a decision. Not the kind that involves shouting or breaking things. Not the kind that explodes. The quiet kind. The kind that changes everything without anyone noticing at first. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The house was silent. Tessa was still asleep. By the time the sun came up, I had already started dismantling the life we built together. I pulled the fireproof box from the back of our closet and took out everything that mattered: documents, policies, titles, records. Every piece of paper that defined our shared life. I placed them carefully into my work bag. No rush, no hesitation, just precision. At the bank, I opened a new account and transferred exactly half of our joint savings. Not a cent more, not a cent less. Fair, clean, defensible. After that, I secured a safe deposit box across town and locked away the originals. Then I met with a family attorney, Wyatt Greer. He didn't seem surprised, not even a little. He looked at the photos, checked the timestamps, listened to the timeline, and nodded, like he had seen this story play out hundreds of times before. Opportunity and deception, he said calmly. That carries weight. He asked me what I wanted. I told him the truth. I want the house, a fair split, and a clean ending. He agreed. By early afternoon, I was back at my desk, finishing reports like nothing had happened, like my world hadn't quietly shifted on its axis. That evening, I sat across from Tessa at dinner. She talked about work, about a bride who couldn't decide on centerpieces. She laughed, rolled her eyes, asked me to pass the salt. I passed it. I nodded in the right places. I played my part perfectly, because every normal moment, every ordinary conversation was buying me time. Time to prepare, time to finish what I started, time to make sure that when the truth finally stepped into the room, I would already be standing on the other side of it. After she went to bed that night, I stayed up in my office. The house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I pulled up the image again, the clearest one, and printed 2 copies. This time, I didn't leave anything to interpretation. I cropped it tight so that everything that mattered sat plainly in the frame. Her car, his motorcycle, the service entrance, and the timestamp running along the bottom like a quiet witness. No zooming needed, no guessing, just truth. One of the copies went into a simple black frame I had picked up at a hardware store earlier that day. Nothing fancy, just enough to hold the weight of what it carried. I slid it into the back of my office closet, behind a stack of old appraisal binders. The second copy went into a plain white envelope. No return address, no note, no explanation, just the image. Finding Patrick Callahan's home address took less than 5 minutes. Property records are public, and searching them is second nature to me. It's what I've done for most of my adult life. Unit 12, a condo complex off Providence Road. The next morning, on my way to an appointment, I made a brief stop. I walked up to the row of mailboxes, found the one marked 12, and slipped the envelope inside. Then I got back in my truck and drove away like it was just another errand. The rest of the day unfolded normally. I appraised a duplex, filed my notes, came home to a wife who greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and asked if I wanted leftover pasta. I said yes, because the plan wasn't finished yet. Friday morning was the last step. Tessa left for work at the same time she always did. I stood at the kitchen window, watching her car disappear around the bend until there was nothing left but silence. Then I moved. I went to my office closet and pulled out the frame. I already knew exactly where it would go. On the right side of the mantel, between our wedding photo and the picture of Audrey in her cap and gown. There was already a nail in the wall, left behind from something Tessa had taken down months ago and never replaced. It felt almost like the house had been waiting for this. I hung the frame carefully, adjusting it until it sat perfectly level. Then I stepped back and looked at it the way a stranger might. To anyone else, it would have meant nothing. Just a car, a motorcycle, a parking lot. But to Tessa, it was a trigger waiting to be pulled. On the coffee table, I placed a folder from Wyatt Greer's office. Divorce petition, property disclosures, asset summaries, everything neat, everything labeled, everything ready. There was no anger in the setup, just order, just finality. Then I picked up my work bag, locked the front door, and left for the day. I spent 2 hours inspecting a split-level house, measuring walls, noting water damage in the crawl space, writing everything down like I always did. My phone stayed silent in my pocket, because there was nothing left to do but wait. Tessa usually got home around 6. That day, she walked in at 5:50. I heard her keys hit the counter, her heels tapping across the tile. Then, nothing. A long, heavy silence. When I stepped into the living room, she was standing in front of the mantel, completely still. Her purse still hung from her shoulder. Her eyes were locked onto the photograph, like she was trying to will it into something else. Where did you get that? Her voice was controlled. Careful. The kind of voice people use when they already know the answer, but aren't ready to face it. I sat down on the couch and kept my tone steady. Work camera. I was appraising the cottage behind the restaurant. The same day you told me you were out of town. I let that settle before adding the rest. There's another one. Different date. Last month. Same parking lot. Same two vehicles. I didn't raise my voice. I've already given both to my attorney. Her face shifted quickly. Shock, then calculation, then something sharper. Almost anger, as if I had crossed the line by noticing what was right in front of me. Marshall, that's a staff parking lot, she said. You're reading too much into it. I shook my head slightly. I don't read into things. I measure them. And when something doesn't add up, I don't ignore it. I nodded toward the coffee table. The rest is in the folder. She followed my gaze, saw the label, and something inside her seemed to collapse. Her shoulders dropped. Whatever story she had been preparing never made it out. What followed wasn't surprising. Denial came first, then tears, then a version of the truth that tried to shrink everything into something small, something meaningless, something that didn't deserve to end a marriage. When that didn't work, she shifted. Blame. I worked too much. I wasn't present. I didn't see her. I let her talk. Not because I believed it, but because I had already decided this conversation wasn't about winning an argument. It was about ending one. When she finally ran out of words, I spoke. Calmly, clearly. The house stays with me. The paperwork is already filed. My share of the savings has been moved. Everything else is secured. And from now on, anything about the divorce goes through my lawyer. No yelling. No negotiation. Just facts. She stared at me like I was someone she had never met. Then she picked up her phone and walked out to the back porch. I didn't need to guess who she called. Her voice carried faintly through the door. Urgent at first, then uncertain, then something close to desperation. The call didn't last long. When she came back inside, her expression had changed. Patrick had already received the envelope. He'd spent the entire day trying to figure out who sent it, wondering who else might have seen it, whether his job was at risk, whether the situation was already spiraling beyond his control. By the time Tessa called him, he was already pulling away, distancing himself, protecting his own life. Over the next 2 weeks, everything unraveled exactly the way it always does when one person has a plan and the other has panic. Tessa started showing up at the restaurant during his shifts, waiting near the service entrance, trying to talk to him, leaving messages. It didn't go unnoticed. The general manager stepped in, and once that happened, the situation stopped being private. It became something else entirely, something public, something that couldn't be explained away. And piece by piece, the life she had been trying to balance between two worlds began to collapse under its own weight. Patrick handed in his resignation the following Monday. There was no argument, no attempt to explain, no effort to hold on to what he had built. He didn't negotiate or delay. He simply packed his things, walked out of the kitchen he had run for years, and within a month, he was gone from Charlotte entirely. Whatever existed between him and Tessa, it didn't survive the weight of reality. It never had the strength for it. Audrey came down from Raleigh the next weekend. I asked her to sit with me at the kitchen table, the same place where we had shared years of ordinary mornings and quiet conversations. This time, there was nothing ordinary about it. I told her the truth. Not the emotional version. Not the angry version. Just the facts. Her mother had been involved with someone at the club. I had discovered it through my work. And I had filed for divorce. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't try to shape her feelings. I simply laid the timeline in front of her and let it speak for itself. That afternoon, Audrey called her mother. She deserved to hear both sides. What she got in return wasn't clarity. It wasn't accountability. It was denial, deflection, a softened version of events that tried to reduce everything to something harmless, something small enough to dismiss as a misunderstanding. Audrey didn't argue. She just listened, and then she stepped back. For 3 weeks, she didn't call her mother again. When spring break came, she didn't go to Tessa. She came home, my house, her room, the same one she had grown up in, untouched in all the ways that mattered. Tessa moved out about 10 days after that Friday. She went to stay with her sister in Huntersville. From there, she made a couple of attempts to reach me. Not directly, but through people who weren't meant to carry that kind of message. A mutual friend from golf. A distant relative who barely knew me. Both times, I gave the same response. Anything she needed to say could go through Wyatt Greer's office. And I meant it. There was nothing left to discuss at the kitchen table. Tessa's parents eventually learned the truth, not from her, but from Audrey, during a quiet Sunday dinner in Raleigh. From what Audrey told me, the moment settled heavily over the room. Her grandmother placed her fork down and didn't pick it up again for the rest of the meal. Some silences don't need words to explain them. Patrick, as far as I could gather, relocated to Asheville and took a position at another restaurant. He cut off all contact. No calls, no messages, nothing forwarded. It became clear, in the end, that whatever he had shared with Tessa was built on convenience. Familiarity, proximity, nothing deeper than what was easy. And the moment it began to cost him something real, he walked away, clean and fast. The divorce moved forward without noise. Wyatt handled everything with precision. Papers were signed, documents exchanged, details settled. I continued working, moving through my appraisal routes the same way I always had. Steady, measured. The house remained mine. The division was fair. Nothing dragged. Nothing broke into chaos. On a quiet Saturday morning in early May, I stood in the living room and looked at the mantel. I took the photograph down. For a moment, I just held it. A simple image. A service lot. 2 vehicles. A timestamp. And yet, it had been enough to unravel 19 years. I removed it from the frame, slid it into a plain envelope, and wrote Tessa's name across the front. Her house keys had already been returned earlier that week. They came through her sister, sealed in a small package with no note, just the keyring Audrey had made years ago at summer camp. I placed the envelope next to those keys on the kitchen counter. That was the last piece, the final trace of her presence I needed to set down. After that, there was nothing left to hold. I picked up my phone and called Audrey. I told her I'd drive up to Raleigh the following Saturday, that we'd spend the day together, that we'd find her something better than the car she had been struggling with. She laughed, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard in weeks. She told me she had already been looking at a used Subaru near campus. I told her to send me the details. I'd check everything before we went. Some habits don't leave you. On my way to the porch, I paused at the mantel again. The wedding portrait was still there, hanging where it had been for years. I stood there for a moment, then lifted it down. I carried it out to the garage and placed it face down in a box with the rest of the things that no longer belonged in the house. Then I went back inside, poured myself a cup of coffee, and called Audrey again to confirm Saturday. Outside, the Silverado sat in the driveway. The lawn needed cutting in the morning. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been for a long time. Not empty, just honest. For the first time in years, every room in that house reflected exactly what it was. Nothing hidden, nothing misrepresented. Just truth, steady, simple, and finally at peace. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, don't let it end here. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful, emotional stories about truth, life, and the moments that change everything. New stories every week. Stay with us.